Hi, I'm George Lucas, and welcome to the behind-the-scenes Star Wars Special Edition.
Hi, my boy.
I'm a bookie. I'm a bookie.
Jabba, you're a wonderful human being.
Bosca.
Hi, everybody. So that was just a little clip that was actually the start of my video about the special editions. And I put the last shot on the end there because the person that I have today, Mark Anthony Austin, actually played Boba Fett in that scene of the Star Wars special editions. But he was also a special effects artist, did a lot of animation. He's worked on over 50 other movies. So I'm sure he's going to have a lot of interesting stories about Star Wars special editions, but also other special effects works, other stuff like that. So feel free to send in your questions and everything. We're going to just talk for a few minutes and I'll let him introduce himself, and then we can start answering. I can see there's already questions coming in. So we'll get to everybody if you just are patient. But first, we're going to introduce Mark. Thanks. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for doing this. I don't know you at all, and it was very nice of you to come on here. Some random person's channel. So, yeah, so you were on the Star Wars special editions, but before that, you worked on a few other movies too, right? Was Casper was your first big movie?
Casper was that was my first movie. So New Hope was only the second movie I've ever worked on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was actually during Casper that we shot the Boba Fett scene. So when we shot the Boba Fett scene, I had no clue that I was going to end up animating the Dewbacks and Rontos and all that stuff. I literally thought that was my wish come true to actually kind of become this hero that I'd wanted to be since I was 13 years old. I didn't think beyond that. I thought I'd already won the lottery, and then 6 months afterwards, they asked me if I'd do the creatures, droids, speeders, and the CG Jawa stormtroopers. Yeah.
Well, yeah, being Boba Fett for a scene of Star Wars, that's already pretty cool to begin with. That would be enough. But yeah, you animated. So you worked on A New Hope, but not Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi?
Well, if I had known they were going to make an Empire Strikes Back special edition, then I would never have left, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay.
The only reason I left was because I thought that was it. I thought we'd done. And you have to understand, there's a lot of hate thrown out about the special edition, but you have to understand why George made it. So George is, you have to place yourself in the late 90s, 1996. He's thinking about making the rest of the movies, the other 6 movies he needs for his full 9. And so it's already at a point where computer or digital effects have really dominated, It's a completely different ball game from when he made the original trilogy, where it was optical effects. So in his mind, he was foreseeing that he's going to make episode 1. It's going to be these like mind-blowing CG effects. And just like the original trilogy, because, when Empire came out, it outdid Star Wars or New Hope. And when Return of the Jedi came out, outdid Empire. Each one outdid the other in terms of the fidelity and the amount of effects. So when he's thinking of like people watching his full 9, he's thinking episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and then 70s optical effects.
Right.
And so he was like, oh my God, because he's a forward thinker. There were things he wanted to do that he couldn't. There wasn't the technology to do. And also he's trying to look at this as people watching the full set, So he had valid reasons for trying to bump up New Hope. But at the time, that was the only movie he was going to bump up. So I had no clue about Empire. Like I said, I probably would have stayed, but they didn't really have much creature stuff in Empire. And
yeah, there wasn't so much animation, creature animation in the other two. So
John Knoll took all the spaceship shots in New Hope. Like, he wouldn't let me do one spaceship shot. He took all the X-wings. I was so pissed.
You did the speeders, right?
Touch was Jabba. I have to make that clear. That's the only creature that it was actually animated by Steve Williams, who directed the blue screen shoot for my Boba Fett shot. 2 shots, but he animated Jabba, and at one point he did ask me. He said, "Mark, can you take Jabba?" I said, "No, I've got Rontos, I've got Scurriers, I've got Dewbacks, I've got Stormtroopers, I've got Jawas, I've got Speeders, I've got droids. I can't do Jabba as well. Please just help me out with the lip sync." So I helped him out with his lip sync, but I didn't want to touch Jabba because it didn't look like Jabba. It didn't, not in one frame did it look on model. So I always,
did you like it better when they updated it with the DVD version?
It still doesn't. It's still, they still have no, they should just scan. They should properly model it. We are so, we are down to pixel level. Kind of, we have these images brain tattooed in our mind. So when we see something that's not right, like when it's so hard to draw the Stormtrooper helmet because you get those curves wrong, it looks wrong. Darth Vader, if you get proportions wrong of anything on his mask, it looks wrong. You don't know why, but something looks wrong because we're so in tune with what everything looks like from Star Wars. We're down to, like I said, pixel level detail.
I always kind of wish that Lucas would have kept working on it past, 2012 or whenever the last time. I just wish that he would have, if he wanted to, just kept, especially if he had done 7, 8, and 9. Just to make them all like what you're saying, that he wants it to be a cohesive one. All the episodes to be a cohesive experience.
Well, that was his idea, but then after he did the first 3, he lost control of it because then Disney had control to finish off the last 3. But I always say that there's only one person on the planet that has any right to say, I want to change this, and that's the creator. So George Lucas is the maker, if he says he wants to change it, and I support him because I didn't agree with everything he did. I didn't even believe that the Greedo scene had happened. I thought that was a rumor because at that time I'd already left ILM. Because I left ILM just after New Hope. I was supposed to work on Hercules, but by the time I got to Disney, they'd scrapped my character and I ended up on Fantasia.
So how did you originally get involved in Casper? That was ILM, right?
Yeah. So I was working in London, but I worked on traditional animation, the drawn animation. I didn't know anything about the computer. And if this was a UK show, then I could name all my commercials and they'd know them. But when that company closed, the owners decided they'd been running 35 years. They decided to retire and close the company, so I was out of a job. And the assistant editor had gone off to an ILM lecture in London, talking about how they did the effects for Jurassic Park, And so he calls me at like 11:30 at night, really noisy in a bar, saying he was talking to the guys from ILM. I said, "That's great, Steve. That's a dream come true, right? It's bucket list stuff." He goes, "Yeah, but you don't understand. They want animators." I said, "Steve, I don't know the first thing about computers. Like, why would they want me?" He said, "Because traditionally they'd taken technical guys, computer savvy guys, and they'd learned animation. But to learn animation, I'm still learning animation. I've done it for 31 years, 35 years. But he said, now it's so user friendly that their idea was to take animators and then teach them in 3 weeks the computer. Much quicker turnaround. So it was a big experiment they did for Casper, and I just happened to be one of those animators that they hired because my friend gave me their hotel phone number. So I called them up and said, "Can I show you my portfolio?" And took it to London, showed them. They said they liked it, but I was like, "Yeah, you always build your hopes up," and they went off. And then 3 weeks later, I got a phone call saying, "Did I want to start work in 3 weeks?" And I had to sort out my visa, my passport, and sell. I rented my house. I sold my car.
Was it pretty easy to learn the animation software at the time to do computer? It was pretty simple.
It's like anyone that plays video games could pick it up. It's very, because I'm a visual person, and so when the first exercise they gave you was a bouncing ball, and a bouncing ball, when you watch it you have this F curve editor, function curve editor, and when I saw the bounce, I could picture it. I could see it as up and down, up and down. I could visualize how time and movement kind of synchronized. So I picked up really quick, because at the end of the 3 weeks training, they asked me if I'd be the lead for Casper. So I must have done a good job picking it up.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, Casper's, I'm curious about that because it's important, because, Jurassic Park was a big breakthrough, but Casper was one of the first, or maybe really the first, where the computer animated characters were like, they were characters that had to act with the actors and had to have dialogue and, to deliver the story. So that was kind of really a big deal.
It was the first time that was a lead character was a CG character. Like the main is Casper. So Casper isn't a human. It was a CG character, and it was the first time they'd ever done it. They'd never done lip sync before Casper. We had to solve lip sync, and we came up with we divided into 2 camps, because we're cutting edge. We're just trying things, And so I'm not sure if you're familiar with computer animation, but me and the modeler went off and formed a camp. We were working on what we called them Casper shapes, because it was like the most extreme smile. So that if you went from the neutral to the extreme smile, it would it'd animate. If you open the mouth, it kind of looked like he's talking. So we were trying that method. Another group, they were doing, the motion sensors that they use all the time now. They had motion sensors on actors' lips, around the lips, and they were recording that data. But that looked so creepy.
Yeah.
That was the horror version of Casper. If they'd gone that route, our route won in the end. And when we got to work on, I just designed Casper's face shapes. But when Phil Robertson got to design the Ghostly Trio shapes, he said, we can't call them Casper shapes anymore. We've got to call them something else. And because we were blending between, or morphing between the different shapes, interpolating on the computer, blend kind of stuck, and we decided to call them blend shapes, and that's now the studio standard.
So the motion capture at the time probably wasn't really sophisticated enough to really look good. So it was mostly fully animated, everything, all the motions on the characters, right? I mean, fully animated. It was mostly fully animated by you, all the motions on the characters,
we all hand animated. So we had 2 types of rig for Casper. We had one for when he was flying, and that one, it led from the chest. When you flew him around, everything kind of led from the chest. And they said to treat his legs like they were legs inside of a pillowcase. So if you ever look at his tail, you can actually see like hips and knees and ankles a little bit in there, because it's like he had legs inside there. But there was another version of the Casper rig for when he was sitting down or acting like a human that bent at the that you started the pelvis. And so everything was centered at the pelvis. He could sit, fly over and sit next to Christina Ricci and say, "What's this big guy got? I haven't got," and act all cocky. So you had to make a choice up front which version of the rig would suit your shot, if he's flying or if he's mainly stationary and acting.
Oh, that's really interesting. So by the time you got to Star Wars, the special edition, That was those models. A lot of those were based on Jurassic Park dinosaurs, right? Is that true?
They weren't just based on them. All they did is took the skin off the brachiosaur and put the Rontos skin on. But the thing is, you can't just do that. We didn't know at the time. This is my second computer movie ever in my life, so I was like learning on the job. But you can't just place whatever skin you want around a skeleton and think it's going to work fine. Because if you look at any kind of joints, any kind of bones inside of a body, the bones are usually central to whatever part of the body. If it's a leg, then the upper leg, then the bone's pretty central, correct?
Right.
But when they slapped the Ronto skin onto the brachiosaur body, the neck of the brachiosaur was a different curvature to the neck of the Ronto. But they didn't want to move anything. They were like, no, we're just going to leave it as is. And so everything kind of really acted funky because all the pivot points were too near the back of the neck. So there's a lot of movement up front, hardly any movement at the back. It was just one of the things they put. They took off the Velociraptor skin and they just chucked the Scaria on top, and you had to just animate it. Just go for it. And I always refer to it as virtual super glue and duct tape because we were just trying things out. There was a shot I had where the stormtroopers coaxing the Dewback to turn around, and as he lifts his arm up, we could see sunlight through his armpit. And it's like, it was like, oh no, what are we going to do about that? I'll just get a black sphere, parent it to his arm, stick it in the hole. No one will know. That's how it was.
You guys are just making it up as you went along. That was the shot where they were looking for the droids. So that the looks for droids shot. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Was there any?
It was the one before that where there's two stormtroopers walk in, and originally it was boarded so that it was just a Dewback's butt in the camera walking away from the camera, and I blocked that version out. But when I looked at it, it was so ugly. It was just a Dewback's butt, and I mean everyone loves a Dewback's face. So I did an alternate version where I turned the Dewback around, I had him face in the camera, and I had the stormtrooper coax him, like, come on, like a stubborn horse. And then he starts walking, and then it cut to the next shot. And I put the two into dailies, and originally the producer, Tom Kennedy, was like, take it out. You can't have two versions in there. I said, well, it's an alternate version. He can choose which one he likes the best, and I'll finish up the one he chooses. No, that's completely disrespectful to Mr. Lucas. And I was like, how so? How so? It gives him all 100% power. Like, which one do you want me to do? And that's it. And he said, no, go take it out. So I went upstairs and I almost did take it out. I was such a rebel. I mean, this is my dream job, and I'm rebelling, but I couldn't delete it. I couldn't. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to leave it in there and take the heat. So when they played the dailies in front of George, they play it on a monitor, kind of like this monitor that we have set up here. There's us in the middle, and at the top and bottom of the screen, you can see these pictures that you've put, as a picture of me and a picture of my headshot. But in this transmission, the bottom letterbox was a camera pointing at us. So you could see the producer, Alex Seiden, the effects supervisor, some other producers, and me at the back. And in the top, it was split into two. And one side was Rick, the producer.
McCollum.
Rick McCallum. And then the other side was George in his San Anselmo house in the loft. And so it's playing, and he likes to watch everything through once first and then go through and loop. So he plays it all through, and then that shot comes up, the Dewback's butt, he walks away. Then my shot comes up, and the producer, I saw his face in the camera because it's pointing at us, you can see him. It went so red. And I swear it was like it's like a pressure cooker. And I'm like, and George is like, what's this? And so my arm goes up at the back. You can see my arm go back. And I said, oh, that's an alternate version, Mr. Lucas. you can choose which one you like best. And that's the one he chose. So glad I didn't delete that scene. I'm so glad I was a rebel.
He liked a lot of the kind of weird little stuff that people would put in. He liked people being creative, right? That's always the vibe that I've got.
Okay, this is the thing: is that Emma says, "What's it like working with George?" Because he seems very distant. He's distant because he's surrounded by these. I called him his yes men.
Mm-hmm.
It's like his entourage. It's hard to get through to him. Like I said, I was take that out. It's offensive. Like it's going to offend him. Like what? That was what I had to deal with all the time. So it was hard to actually get him engaged. He looked kind of like, like he could quite easily just be happy to leave. But when I said about the alternate version, suddenly he got engaged. He was like, oh, and he's perked up, and he was talking about it. And I was saying about trying to make it like a horse that was stubborn, that he was having to like coax a bit more, that he was like really having to pull on the reins and kind of, don't worry, it's going to cut, perfectly to the next shot because I'll make sure the end is the same. And we were like talking, and there's only maybe 2 or 3 times that happened in the 6 months that I worked on that show. Only because he was surrounded by this kind of force field,
You would get like directions for your shots from an intermediary, and then you'd have like a screening where Lucas would look at it. So basically,
sometimes I what I would do is I'd look at the storyboard and I'd slide the creature like a Ronto. Okay, there's going to be a Ronto in here following this guy, and so I'd slide the Ronto. I wouldn't make him walk or anything. I'd just slide it because I want to get a buy-off from speed and the size and the composition. So that's when George would look at it after I did my first pass, kind of match it to the boards, and he kind of buy off on whether it was right or whether he wanted to change something. Whether he wanted, most of the time he didn't, but one time I had a Ronto shot. It was a really easy Ronto shot. It was just a Ronto walking through the plate towards the camera, and I had to put a speeder with a guy on it, speeding away and avoiding the family speeder that was coming in. Really easy shot, and I blocked it out, and I thought, oh, this is going to be my easiest one of the bunch, because I had a ton to do. And I was always working on about 4 or 5 shots at the same time, and just working on one for like 5 hours, sending off to get rendered, working on another one. And so George looks at it, and he's like, there's no person leading this one. So I was like, no, there isn't. There's no one in the plate, but the ball shows it walk in this direction, so that's what I did. Oh, well, we can't have him just by himself. Do we have any guys to stick on the back of him? And we said, we've got stormtroopers, but that's it. Do we have any Jawas? No, we've got no Jawas. I know. He's like, let's have the speeder go in front of the Ronto, and it scares it. That would be good. Okay, that's a change. I thought I was done, but okay, I can do that. Then he's like, no, let's have it go in front of it, and then we stick a Jawa on it, and then when it rears up, the Jawa's like trying to fight for control. That sounds great. Okay, so I'm writing this down. You go, no, let's have 2 Jawas. When it rears up, one falls off the back, big puff of smoke, big puff of dust comes up. The other one's hanging on the front. I know, the other one falls off, and he's hanging, and he's swinging. I was like, oh my God, this is nothing to do with the shot. It's an establishing shot. It's one of those shots where it shows, and you think, oh, this is where the next shots are going to take place. Here we're back in Mos Eisley, and so the next show's Mos Eisley. It's not meant to be a circus,
Yeah.
And so within the space of about 5 minutes, this shot that I thought was done ballooned up into this big production. You know the shot. It's just like,
I think I've seen that interaction you were just talking about is in a special edition documentary with George watching the video and coming up with that idea. I think I watched that exact moment you were just talking about.
I did have it all recorded on VHS, and I lost the tape. So I wonder if that's the tape I lost.
Really, if I can find it, I can send it to you or something. I swear I watched that. Yeah, because there's some of the special editions video documentaries and things of videos of him watching the shots and giving his feedback on the different special edition shots. And I think I saw that same exchange. No, he always seemed like he loved it when he could, get creative, put in unexpected stuff. Kind of. Somebody was talking about I forget who it was. They were talking about. They said something about taking out the thing where Han steps on Jabba's tail, and they were like, "Well, that's Lucas's favorite part of the whole scene. That's his favorite thing in there."
Is it?
Is that? That's what they said in the.
I was there for the. They did it. They did a version without stepping over first.
Yeah.
And that looked so much better.
Really, you're not a fan?
I didn't. Okay. He walked around. We're not messing with the 76 footage. It's Han walking around. All we're doing is rotoing the guy out.
Mm. So
someone says, "What about Jabba's tail?" And I'm like, no, because as soon as you plant that seed in George's head, then it's gonna be hard to dig that plant up. I was like, no. I was like, movie magic. It's movie magic. Come on, artistic license. And then he started being like, he getting fixated on that. And I'm like, oh no, they're gonna. And then they opted for that 2D walkover, and I just thought it was unnecessary. I preferred it before. I'm sorry, I thought movie magic version was a lot better. But all that stuff I got to witness, but luckily it wasn't anything I had to do because that was all Steve and Stu Mashwitz. So.
Well, it's I think it's exactly the type of thing that Lucas would like to take, Harrison Ford in there, that he's just walking normally, and that you can just shift his body a little bit and make it look like he was. That's just, I think, interesting to Lucas. It's just
he's an innovator. He tries stuff. That's why we love him. But as soon as Star Wars was made, people were like, okay, you can stop trying stuff now because we don't want to be messing with this. But that's just Lucas. He had to try. Green screen. I think he overdid the green screen in the prequels, and we learned a lesson from the prequels. I think now we're at a good balance where it's a mixture of green screen where it's needed. Like, green screen is great so you don't have to fabricate that street going back there. It costs so much money to fabricate a street. And why not have a green screen? No one's going down there. We just have to see it in the background. That's when green screen is awesome. But when they use it for everything, like foreground props, background props, things interacting, and it's just someone on the green screen looking at green screen sticks with balls on the end of them, that's too much. That's when I should be camp digital, but I am definitely camp practical. I think you should get as much in the camera as you can and just be clever about shooting it. And I don't like the lazy way out where it's like, I don't want to think about it. I'm going to fix it in post. And it's like, come on, it's fun working stuff out.
Well, it's how Rob Coleman described how George Lucas shoots, that he said that Lucas isn't shooting the whole shot. He's just shooting the one element. Like he's shooting I think the quote when Coleman's talking about, he said, Lucas is just shooting the Obi-Wan element. So he's just getting that piece. Yeah. And then he's going to figure out the rest later, Yeah. That's an interesting way to think about it. I mean, I think he was always, well, it's also partly that he never really liked the on-set part of shooting, right? He was never that interested in.
Yeah, I think it tired it. He did so much of it. It was such a brutal, such a brutal kind of film shoot, the first movie. So, having to deal with the desert and, everything breaking down, and having to deal with the unions and the studios in London. And, they kind of gave him a hard time because he was this, this young American director. Like, what's he done? And so they kind of gave him a hard time. And I know that must have taken a toll on him. So that's why I think he was much happier having Irving Kershner take the steering wheel, and then he could kind of like be in the back seat, kind of direct him back there. But
because when he's just in the editing room, he's going to be in control, and it's he doesn't have to worry about there's whatever, there's 80 people standing around, and this is costing me $100,000 an hour, and they have to have lunch in 45 minutes, and that's a lot of stress. I think that has nothing to do with, Stanley Kubrick said something like filming a movie is like trying to write War and Peace when you're in a bumper cart in an amusement park, because there's just all the crap going on when you're trying to think artistically,
Yeah.
But it's also stuff that one shot that I remember Rick McCollum calls out on the Revenge of the Sith DVDs. There's a little shot where Mace Windu is going in to talk to Yoda in the Senate, and he's just walking across a hallway, and it's a 5-second shot of Mace Windu going into the Senate pod. But they filmed Samuel L. Jackson in front of a green screen, and then they built a model, and it's like this complicated special effect rather than building the hallway. And Rick McCollum said people asked him, why would you do a green screen special effect? It's just somebody walking down a hall. And he said, because it's, the shot's only in the movie for 5 seconds. And so we could never afford to build a whole hallway for 5 seconds. They would have had to either just drop the shot or, do it some other way, because they couldn't build a whole hallway for a 5-second shot. So stuff like that, I think it really opened up. It's, you can have an environment for a 5-second shot because they didn't have to pay to build the whole entire.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said about when you use green screen. Smart. It's like, okay, we can't fabricate this whole corridor. We can't fabricate this whole street. We can't fabricate these mountains. Let's just have a green screen and choose exactly the mountains, exactly the corridor we want to go back there.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You were saying that when you left after A New Hope, you didn't know that they were going to be doing work to Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Was that kind of when you started? Did you have an idea of how much they were going to do to A New Hope, or did you just think it was a couple shots and then it started to grow? And
they had, I mean, only was privy to looking at the stuff that I was involved in, or I got to witness the other guys working on their shots, But a lot of the stuff that happened in New Hope was new to me until I saw it on the screen. When I went to the theatre and saw it at the premiere, I didn't know they did Ben's house. Didn't know it was going to redo that. Didn't know it was going to redo the canyon. I didn't know it was going to do the Greedo thing. There was a time when George was very conscious of the violence that happens in the detention center when they rescue Princess Leia.
Right.
So what he'd done is he asked the editor to screen that sequence, but to take out all the shots of seeing a stormtrooper or imperial officer being shot, and just replicate one of those shots. You get lots of shots of the cameras being blown up, sensors. He goes, just double up on those, and I want to see a cut like that. And we all went down to the theatre and watched it. And so, can you hear my dog Wookie barking in the background?
Yeah, I can hear it, but it's okay.
Okay.
Do you have to go help him? Is something wrong, or?
No, he's just an asshole.
Okay.
He is a typical Wookiee. He's just. So we went down to the theatre and we watched this screening of the detention scene minus the violence. But they went down there and, where are you taking this thing, And then bang, 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 everyone's dead. It's like you didn't. They were there and then they weren't. So everyone just said it's weird. It's like because you don't see anyone shot. It's like they're there and then they're dead. Like you don't. You need to see them being shot. It plays weird. And he was like, it was. Don't know what I was thinking. I just wanted to try it. I wanted to see it, and he scrapped it. So I just thought when I heard about the Greedo thing, I thought, oh, he's probably done the same thing. He's probably tried it, showed it to the crew, and everyone's kind of chimed in with their opinion, and he's probably scrapped it because it doesn't make sense to take away Han Solo's character arc. He has to be the smuggler. It has to be the bad guy to become the good guy. After like saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to take my money and leave at Yavin 4," and then suddenly, "Yeehaw! Take the shot, kid." He redeems himself, but we needed him being the bad guy so that he can be a good guy and contrast at the end, you know.
But
So I just thought that was a vicious rumor, and when I saw it on the actual screening, I was like, "What has he done?" That was it. That was one thing that I couldn't condone that he had done.
well, but you know, Greedo was always threatening to shoot Han, right? He
Yeah.
was always Han was always since. Well, this is a whole. We're going to get off a whole tangent, but I always, you know, Greedo Han was always acting in self-defense, right? That's always been the scene.
No, that was his argument, is acting in self-defense. But
Yeah, he was.
I mean, in the original, he's acting in self-defense, but just to make things, you know, fail-safe, he shoots him first. You know, that's like, you're not going to take any chances.
Well, Greedo was about to shoot him either way.
Yeah. So why wait till to that moment? Let's shoot him now. So he does, and that's the right thing to do. So when I went to the special edition and they changed it so they had Greedo shoot and then Han shoots, it was just like, what? Why? I didn't understand that. I'm glad because they switched it back. I think the latest versions it's back to.
No, well, Greedo still shoots. It's edited slightly different.
I don't know. I saw maybe it's just someone's edit they've done. I don't know.
Oh, well, that's
I wouldn't miss it if it was gone. Put it that way.
Well, there's been 5 different versions of it.
Yeah.
It's been slightly changed in the 2006 DVD and in the Blu-ray, and he changed it again for the 4K. But they're all Greedo shooting. Just he tweaks it a little bit to make it look more natural. I think part of the complaint people had was that he kind of struggled because the footage that he had, Han kind of moved really sort of funny in the 1997 version. So he's been messing with that, but he never took out Greedo shooting. That's still there.
Okay.
But it's interesting what you're talking about with the Imperial people getting shot, that he wanted to take that out. You know that he did on a couple shots earlier take out the Imperial people. He took out like a half a second of the shot. He took out the actual part where the Imperial, where you see them get shot.
Yeah.
So like the actual impact on their shot on their chest. So then you just kind of see them like fly off. He did that on 2 shots, which I always thought was really interesting because it's like a change of about 6 frames. But the fact that was important to him to do that. Did you ever hear him talk about the issue of the violence with the characters getting shot? And
no, that was it. That was the only time when we had to go and look at this edit of the sequence. But that's the only time the issue of violence came up. So, because like I said, all I got was the storyboards for the shots that affected me. So that's the Mos Eisley interior, the entrance to Mos Eisley land speeder, and the Dewback stuff. So,
you know, something else I always wondered about with the Dewbacks too. You know that there's one shot of the original Dewback puppet still in the movie. Do you know the shot I made?
is it with it outside the cantina?
Yeah, the last shot when Obi-Wan's walking away after the whole when he's leaving the cantina. That's the original puppet in there. Do you have any idea why that was left or wasn't changed? I mean, it's a very, very quick shot.
Yeah,
but
you have to remember as well that this is like we have so much. We have movies at our fingertips now. Like I could quite easily just go on my laptop and find a scene in a movie that I want to reference, very easily. But in the late 90s, the internet's brand new. There's nothing on it yet.
Yeah,
it's barren. There's people writing recipes for cakes, and that's about it. Or people showing their crochet, but it's very barren. And also at ILM, we had email, but we did not have internet access because they didn't want anything leaking out. So even though internet was out, we had no access to it. So downside is that you don't have any reference at your fingertips. Everything's going to be memory. So I didn't have, now I could have the movie playing as I'm working, but back then that was impossible. It was like you'd have to wheel in a TV and wheel in a cassette player, and
yeah, that's probably what it was.
It's all digital now, but back then it was like it's brand new. Digital was brand new. We were playing with computer effects that now very easy to do because we've got so many digital tools now. We can simulate cloth, we can simulate ropes.
Mhm.
On New Hope, I had to animate those ropes. Are the hardest things to animate of all the things I animated on Star Wars.
Oh, like the reins on the Ronto and
Reins on the
okay.
Ronto, the reins on the Dewback.
Mhm.
It was I don't know if you've ever done computer animation, but it was a chain. It was a chain with like, it must be like I don't know, 50, 70 joints in it, and so you had to kind of, it's like bending wire. You had to start this end and bend the wire into the shape that you wanted and hope it lined up with the bit in the corner of the Dewback's mouth. Or you should go back here and change something that affects the whole rein. And once you've done that, for every shot, you've got to make sure it swings side to side and then bounces a bit. And
Yeah.
they were the hardest things. That everyone looks at them now and thinks oh, it's simulated. No,
Yeah, that they have.
Simulations.
Yeah, you had to actually link by link do that all.
It's stop mo, yeah, it's basically
stop motion. Yeah, that's good. That's interesting. I haven't really done computer animation. I've done very simple like model. I do comic books, and so I've done like in Blender. I've done very simple models of my characters, just so I could do like lighting tests and stuff. So, but it's a lot of work. I could get an idea of how much work it is to manipulate each tiny little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. At the time, that's probably what it was. That the shot would go by so quickly. Something like that one Dewback shot would just go, that it wasn't really worth it because people weren't freeze framing it and looking at, it's really, I mean, the original Dewback puppet's in there for 8 frames or something like that, just behind Alec Guinness in that one shot. I was always curious about it though, because he does this 3 times. There's one shot of the original Dewback model, and there's one shot of the original Wampa hand puppet when Luke gets knocked off the Tauntaun, and there's one shot of the original Sice Noodles puppet that wasn't replaced with CJ. And I always kind of had this idea that maybe he wanted to kind of, just for history's sake, keep a little bit of the original puppet in the movie somewhere. It's like a little hit, it's just kind of my pet theory, because he does it one time for each of the things,
Yeah, maybe.
But maybe it's just, that goes by so quick that he thought, that's not worth it, because nobody's ever going to see that.
I told you I was always working like 4 to 5 shots at a time. And for every shot, I had to keep a log of how many hours I'd worked on each shot, because they had a budget per shot.
Mm-hmm.
So the first shot of the Dewbacks, there was a Dewback in the distance, another Dewback coming past behind the Stormtrooper, and there's the Lambda shuttle, and that was the first shot that we got to animate with the Dewbacks, and it was the hardest one to get an approval on, because it was the first one out. So you can imagine everybody had a say. There was like too many cooks in the kitchen.
Mm.
There were people pulling it this way. There were people pulling it this way. So I was trying to cater to everybody,
Mm.
Do I pull it this way or this way? Because someone's saying pull it this way, someone's saying pull it this way. You got to kind of navigate everyone's revisions, and then try and make it look natural and cohesive and organic. And it took a long time to cut. It got so clunky that in the end I had to kind of quickly like repair it, because we ran out of money on it. I actually, there was one part where I said to George, I said, I need you to approve the Dewback animation before I can start the Stormtrooper, because the Dewback is going to affect the Stormtrooper because he's sitting on top of it.
Mm.
If the Dewback does this, Stormtrooper gets thrown over,
Mm.
So it makes sense that you have to say, yes, this is fine for the Dewback. So then now I can work on the Stormtrooper and have like the overlap and all that stuff. But no one just seemed to get it on that first shot, and so I wish I had an extra day just to animate that Stormtrooper, because it's.
You don't like how it looks?
I see it. It's like, oh, there's stuff I got to change. I wish I could change, but.
No, it looks good. It looks good. I never had an issue with it. I've seen it 1,000 times.
Did you know that the stormtrooper, the black undersuit of the stormtrooper, is actually the Terminator 2 Robert Patrick that walks out of the flames? The silver
No, I didn't know that. That's the same
colored
CGI
black.
model?
It's the same high-res Robert Patrick,
Okay.
colored black, and stormtrooper armor slapped on the outside of it.
That is funny. I knew that the Rontos were brachiosaurs and all that, but I did not know about. Huh. That's pretty
And I was
funny.
there for the Ronto naming, because I always wondered how George came up with some of his names, like Hammerhead and Greedo and Walrus Man, and so we were calling it we had the Ronto, but it was called. They kept calling it the Brontosaurus creature.
Mhm.
That's a mouthful.
Brontosaurus creature.
The Brontosaurus creature. And then when you move the Brontosaurus creature this way, have the Brontosaurus creature, and it just was like too much. So he's like, we have to shorten it. Let's call it a Bronto, like a Bronto, like a Brontosaurus, but a Bronto. And I can't remember what. Very soon he's like, no, just get rid of the B. We'll call it just a Ronto here, Ronto. And someone wrote Ronto down, and I thought, oh man, one day I'm going to see that on packaging.
On a toy box. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was there for the naming of the Ronto. So
I think there's video of that too. I think
is there?
Yeah. I'll have to find some of these clips. Yeah, you might even be in some of these clips that I'm thinking of, because there are definitely clips of George watching the video feed that you were describing, where he's approving the shots and giving his feedback. And I think that's another one where he talks about he comes up with the Ronto name.
Yeah, I've seen a still of me. Like I said, I was in the bottom panel at the back. I did see one still of me in kind of a daily setup, but it could be that.
So when you were doing Casper, how did they pick you for Boba Fett? Just you were the right size, right place, right time?
I was the right. Bit of a longer story than that. He had, like I said, he had the idea that he was going to make these special editions, or re-release the movies, but make only New Hope special edition. But he was going to re-release all three movies to get the newest generation able to see it in theaters, so that when the prequels came out, then they'd make sense to this new generation of fans. So he had this idea that he was going to get all of the license holders like Kenner Toys, Dark Horse Comics, whoever was associated with Star Wars for licensing, bring them to Skywalker Sound, put them in the theater, show them his recut new trailers for the re-release of the movies, get them all like geared up, and then at the end of the trailer, the three trailers that he shows them, when they're all like pumped and jazzed, suddenly you're going to hear the Imperial March and stormtroopers are going to come down. Both sides of the theater have the stormtroopers lying in it, and then you hear Darth Vader, and he'd come out of the front of the theater, and he'd be like, "We'd be honored if you would join us for refreshments," or something like that. That was the idea. So they put out an email saying, "Who wants to be a stormtrooper?" You can imagine how many people said, I did.
Right.
I responded straight away. So did like 125 other people. So when they suddenly had this influx of like volunteers, they're like, "Oh my God, we can do something much better then. We can still do that idea, but when they go to refreshments, we could make a whole new thing." So they decided to recreate the Cantina Bar, the Mos Eisley Cantina Bar. And when they went to refreshments, they would go to the Mos Eisley Cantina Bar. It was in one of the sound stages at Skywalker Sound. The bar just looked like the real bar.
Are they still the actual bar pieces?
I don't think it was a real one. I think they fabricated it, but
okay.
Maybe I don't know. I mean, there was the bar there. They had the land speeder parked outside. They had the droids, but they weren't moving. They had no one in them. They had a stormtrooper on the door checking IDs, and they had patrons. All these guests mingling in the bar, getting drinks, and they wanted to populate it with aliens. And so they had the band playing in the corner, miming to the music. And then Don Bees calls me up, and I'm friends with Don Bees. Don Bees runs the archives.
Mhm.
And that's another long story, but I end up becoming really good friends with him. He knows I'm a huge Boba Fett fan because that's how we got introduced. So he says, hey, he tells me the idea. He goes, there's a certain character that you might be interested. I'm like, Don, please, no. Like, you can't. Really? And he's like, don't build your hopes up, because everything attaches to that flight suit.
Mhm.
Everything. So if you don't fit the flight suit, then you can't do it. But come along and to the ranch, try the suit on. I'm like, oh man, I'll be there tomorrow. So the zipper going up was like my dream come true. It was like I heard angels singing. I was in heaven.
And it was the Return of the Jedi Boba Fett suit, right? They just took it out of the archives from Return of the Jedi.
They have. This is called to Don, because I asked him. They have enough parts to make about between 5 and 7 suits at a push, because you have to have multiples for if something tears on set, they got to get the other suit. If a jetpack breaks, they got to get the other jetpack. You know, if something falls off, they got to get the spare. So they always have multiple suits. So yeah, this is me. That picture in the middle is the very first time I wore the suit. So this was backstage at Skywalker Sound.
How old were you at the time?
27, 28.
Ah, you look really young.
And so I fit the suit. So I was in the suit for like 6 hours. I loved it. I got so comfortable in the suit. They said, would you be willing to do another one? I was like, sign me up, you know. So I did another one of these. So now I'm the guy that fits the suit. So George went to Steve. This is Steve Williams. And in the background down there is Annie Pollard. She was actually the same costume fitter for on the Sarlacc pit for Glenn Randall Jr. and Dickie Beer. But George went to Steve Williams there and said, find someone to jump in the suit. He goes, I know just the guy. And so he came down and said, has anyone told you that about, you know, that you're going to be in the suit? I said, no. He goes, oh, and then I didn't tell you anything. And he walked away. I'm like, no. It kept me hanging for like at least 24 hours before I finally got an official phone call from the producer saying, you know, they'd love it if I'd be willing to jump in the suit for this screen shoot on December 6th, 1994 it was.
That is pretty cool. So how long did you shoot for? Just
The morning was the first shot, walking on, and then the afternoon was the check and walk off.
Yeah, it's in 2 shots, right? In the final movie.
Just 2.
I forgot that there were 2. I always had the idea that when Boba Fett walks on in the last shot, that it was kind of a surprise, but he's there earlier in the scene too.
Yeah. It was a surprise because in the pan and scan, they would cut that bit off.
That's true. Yeah, he's gone in this shot.
Yeah, it would get cut off. They'd keep Chewie and they'd chop me off. And then my favorite shot I animated was the Dewback where the stormtrooper dismounts. And again, in the pan and scan, they always chop the stormtrooper dismounting off.
I remember when I was a little kid, the only way I had seen Star Wars was pan and scan VHS. And my whole childhood, it drove me crazy because when Luke was saying that he could see Tusken Raiders in his binoculars, there were no Tusken Raiders. My whole childhood, I didn't know what the hell he was talking about.
The same as Mos Eisley. I was like squinting, saying, "Is there a spaceport down there?" The original.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The shot from where they're looking off the cliff. Yeah, you can't tell that there's buildings down there on a VHS tape. You can't see anything at all.
Yeah.
That's funny. Now, Don, who you were talking about, he played Boba Fett too, right? In the Return of the Jedi scenes.
That's why I'm saying that if I had not left, if I had known they were doing more Star Wars, I would have stayed, and I'm sure I would have been in the suit for Return of the Jedi. No doubt, no doubt.
People love this picture online.
I know that. The thing is that they really rag on this picture, but they just don't understand what a legend Don is. You know.
Yeah, they don't know who he is. They just think it's funny that Boba Fett has glasses and.
Yeah, it's like saying, "Oh, look at John Williams wearing glasses." It's like, what? You know, it's like it doesn't make any sense. And if they'd known that Don is up there with John Williams for not quite like John Williams, but I mean he's done so much stuff, legendary. So, but I'm sure I would have been in these photos if I hadn't left. So it's one of the biggest.
Well,
it must be the biggest fork I've ever had in my whole life career is leaving for Disney or staying at ILM, making that choice. It was.
Well, you left for Disney, and then you did you did their dinosaurs movie, right? You did a few other things over there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty cool too. That's
Yeah, and I'm glad that I became a better animator for having left ILM because Disney had, I'm not sure if they have it still, but they had a really great artist development program. So I definitely, I didn't care for the politics at Disney, but in the 13 years I was there, I definitely improved as an animator at least 300-400%, at least.
I've heard people talk about that a lot, especially even like further back in the 80s, that Disney used to put a lot of time and money into developing artists. Like Tim Burton's talked about that the stuff he was animating when he got hired never actually ended up in the movies, but they spent time developing him, and then he eventually, he makes all of the Tim Burton movies. And it seems like they don't really do that anymore the way that they used to.
No, but then I don't know what it's like there. You only know. Like the only ILM that I am familiar with is the ILM that existed in San Rafael.
Right.
People working at ILM will just think of the Presidio studio now. It depends. Like the years I was at Disney, it was a certain version of Disney because it changes through time.
What did you think about or did you watch the Light and Magic documentary about the ILM history?
I did, and I'm in episode 6.
Okay.
There's a shot of the Casper crew in episode 6, and I'm right in the middle.
I remember they talked about Casper. Yeah. Did you like the documentary overall?
Yeah. I thought it was really good. I just they did leave a lot of stuff out. I'm not sure. I haven't watched the second one yet.
Uh-huh. Well, the second one seemed like it tried to fix stuff that was left out of the first one. It seemed
that's what I heard. But then I had a lot of people that were kind of advocates for how come you weren't featured more in the first one. I said, well, maybe I will be in the second one, but according to them, they didn't see me. So
no, the second one focuses more on the Star Wars prequels.
Yeah.
Which is, I thought that was pretty. The first one's talking about like the history of special effects and everything, and they mentioned the Star Wars prequels for like 3 minutes, in the whole thing. And I thought, okay, well, whether you like the prequels or not, that's pretty ridiculous to just kind of, if you're talking about special effects history, to just like skip right over the Star Wars prequels. I mean, there's so much. So the new series is pretty much all about that. But I'll have to go look and find you there. I remember them talking about Casper. So after you worked at Disney, you've worked on a lot of other things. You've worked on X-Men, Star Trek, all kinds of stuff. What's one of your favorite post-Star Wars projects?
I'd say definitely up there the first Avengers movie.
Okay.
War Horse was amazing to work on. I loved working on 300 Rise of an Empire. But my favorite movie I ever worked on was Ultraman Rising for Netflix.
Really?
Yeah, just for working in film industry, you run into a lot of egos, as you can probably imagine.
Yeah.
But working on Ultraman, I was just jazzed to work on an Ultraman movie, but the production there was no egos. It was ego free, just full on. Everyone wanting to make the best movie we can together, and I'd never encountered that before. And so, just because I had 18 months of that, and I got to work on 12. I designed 12 of the sequences in the movie. So when you think of the movie having about 47 sequences, it's about a quarter of the movie I got to have a hand in. So yeah, I'm really proud of my work on that. But,
I haven't seen that movie. I'll have to.
you're gonna thank me for send me an email thanking me when you watch it.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah, cool.
What's a movie that was? Well, no, you can't say that. I was going to ask, what's a movie that you had a really good experience working on it, but that the movie wasn't very good? But you probably don't want to say
No,
movies that you.
There's movies I worked on that I was disappointed in the outcome, but working on it was fun. Like Battleship is one.
Okay.
I wasn't that impressed with Battleship. I find it less offensive now, but at the time it was just when I was invited to go and see the movie. We get our own kind of premiere for all the post effect stuff. And when we went to watch it, I felt like someone just put a tin bucket on my head and was just banging it for like an hour and a half. It just so much. Maybe it just had the volume up too high, but it was a lot of fun to work on.
That's yeah, I mean, a lot of movies that, maybe they're not great movies, but you could see that they must have been fun to make. There's no reason that they wouldn't have, special effects and everything don't necessarily correlate to how well the fun.
It's always cool to be given some iconic character. Like, when I went to my interview for Ultraman Rising, I told them, I said, I've already animated Ultraman before. And they're like, where? Where have you animated him? And I said, Ready Player One. And they said, he's not in Ready Player One. And I said, no, but he was originally. Originally, there was a fight between Ultraman, Mechagodzilla, and Iron Giant at the end.
Oh,
and
really?
They replaced Ultraman with Gundam.
Okay.
But I was just jazzed to work on Ultraman, like for Ready Player One. So when they took him out, I was kind of a bit bummed. And when they offered me the role on Ultraman Rising, I was like, yes, finally I get to work on Ultraman that people will see.
You worked on Warhorse and Ready Player One, so you've worked with Spielberg a couple times. Is that?
He was involved in Casper as well. That's when I first.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Brad Silberling was the director, but every now and again, like once a month, then Spielberg would come along and do the repair work, or he'd kind of he'd make those executive choices, and I want it to be this way and that way, and have his say. So he definitely was in control.
Well, that's interesting. I know there's a few movies that are sort of ghost directed by Spielberg, like Poltergeist, and was he pretty hands-on with you guys, with the effects people, like on Ready Player One? And
man, different directors have different ways of directing, and most directors will come up and say, okay, I got this shot, I want you to do this, I want you to make the character come in from this side, he's got to fill a third of the screen, this is going, and they'll tell you exactly everything you got to do, and that's the way they direct, and that's directing, right? But along comes Spielberg, he comes along and he doesn't tell you what to do, he just says, I want the audience to feel this. In this shot, I want the audience to really feel, like the peril that Joe is in, because he's facing off against this tank and he's trapped. He's got nowhere to go. He's boxed in, and he's not telling you what to do. He's telling you what he wants, what the emotion is going to be. And for some reason, you see everything clearly that way.
that's interesting. How would you describe Lucas's directing between those different styles?
Well, Lucas was different because, like I said, first of all, it starts with storyboards with Lucas. So there were storyboards on Warhorse, but every now and again, Spielberg would try something. He's like Lucas in that way. He would try some stuff. He tried some stuff that wasn't even used in the movie. Some stuff was, but there's some tests I did that weren't. He wanted to try it anyway. It was a test I did. It was a great shot. I wish I had more time to work on it because I'm sure I could have got it to work. But it was a shot looking through the iron sights of a Gatling gun. It was in the cavalry charge in Warhorse. And, you know, the guns were hidden under the canopy of the trees. That's why they didn't see them. That's why it was the last historical cavalry charge ever in history. That was the Gatling gun kind of finished the cavalry off. But there's a shot he wanted through the iron sights where he wanted the horses running in through the canopy. So there's a thin slither of light with trunks of trees breaking it. And then in would come, in slow motion, would come the horse with a rider on. And he wanted the muzzle flashes to act like a zoetrope. You know, a zoetrope? Like the flash. But every time you saw the flash, you saw the guy falling. So it was violence, but it was beautiful violence. You know? It was just silhouette. You didn't have gratuitous blood and gore. It wasn't one of those movies.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it was fun just because he encouraged that creativity and wasn't afraid to try things and then reject them if they didn't work.
Somebody just this is a super chat, so I'm supposed to respond to these. And I know Colt, who's a cool guy, by the way. So hi, Colt. I think he's asking me if I have any plans to do a video about Young Indiana Jones. I've never actually watched Young Indiana Jones all the way through. Have you? Do you like that? Have you seen it? I know somebody that's
I loved it when he
really.
Yeah.
I know somebody that's obsessed with it. It's trying to get me to watch it all the time, and I've just never. I don't know. It's kind of a time investment. I just haven't got to it. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think about Young Indiana Jones? Should I watch it?
I think you should.
Yeah. I didn't know that he really changed it for the home video either. Do you know what was changed?
No, I have no idea.
Huh. That's interesting. But I mean, he's changed everything he's released on home video. American Graffiti has changes, and THX has changes. So.
Yeah, he loves technology. So I mean, his obsession with technology and trying things, like I said, and keeping up with the times and innovating. That's what makes him tick. That's his passion. So
what was the vibe at ILM when you guys were doing this? Was there like fear that it was going to be controversial, or were you guys like, oh, we shouldn't mess with this, or were you excited? Was it? It seemed to me before the special editions came out, I remember, the commercials for it and everything, and there was no concept that like, oh my gosh, he tampered with it was. We were so excited to see the new scenes. We were so pumped for all this,
Yeah, I really didn't expect the backlash. But you have to remember why we had the backlash. The backlash was mainly because he decided to kind of shelf the original. I think it was a mistake. I didn't think he would do that. I thought you'd have a choice. You'd be able to buy the special edition or the original, He could have made twice the money. I would have bought both, But for some reason, he decided to be like, "Oh no, let's forget that version. Let's hide it. Let's pretend it never existed." And that's where all the hatred came in, I think, for special edition, because it was like we killed off the original, and that was not anyone's intent.
Did you, all the way up until the special edition came out, you still had the idea that he was going to release both versions?
I thought he would, because it does make sense. It makes sense that, you could probably sell, like I said, double your profits.
Well, he was, there's commercials from 1995 with the advertisements for that this was the last time he was ever going to release the original version. And that he was telling people like 3 years before the special editions that he wasn't gonna release the original versions anymore.
I feel it's a shame because it existed. I saw it in theaters, so I would love to have. Luckily I have got a VHS of it, but I can understand why people would want that version they saw in theaters. It makes sense to me. So I think it was silly of him to make that choice and kind of shelve it, box it away, put it in the vault, never to be seen again, because all it did was upset a lot of people. So I get that.
Yeah, well, I was just interested in the idea that because it's not just, a lot of people were kind of surprised that he didn't keep offering the original, and I was always thinking, like, I thought we knew that in 1995 that he wasn't, or at least it's what he said, was that the original wasn't ever going to be released again,
Yeah,
But people did always have this idea that the special edition was like an alternate version that was supposed to be alongside, as opposed to being the version from that point on.
No, like I said, the original reason for it was because he was worried about people watching them incrementally and going, episode 1, wow, 2, wow, 3, wow, 4. Oh, this looks dated.
Yeah, that's
This
true.
looks kind of dated. Empire, this looks less dated. Oh, this looks much better. Whoa, he didn't. He wanted to just bolster. He didn't want that. He didn't want the drop. He didn't want it to be cutting edge fidelity, digital amazingness, and then 1970s optical, where there's a difference in fidelity, a big difference. So
And there was
there was
did
a
you
thing
see,
we had to create for the special edition. It was a pantyhose filter.
Mhm.
When he shot the original, especially in the desert, he stretched pantyhose, not just in the desert, but on the Death Star as well. He wanted to knock back the fidelity of the image. He didn't want people seeing the details of like Phillips screw heads and things like that holding something. So he wanted to knock back that clarity to make it more believable. If you squint at something, you can see it better, kind of thing. Or you're more forgiving of it. You don't see those. You don't see the duct tape or the camera tape holding those two things together. And so, because he created that, he'd done that for a lot of the shots on the original movie. We had to create a digital equivalent to do the same thing to our digital work, to kind of knock it back a little bit so it matched that fidelity that he had. But you have to remember that a lot of the shots he wanted to redo, because when he did the blue screen, if you remember the original, when the wire wings blew up in the trench, all their flames were pink in the original. If you watch the original, it's all pink because the blue screen sapped out all the color.
Right.
So in the special edition, I don't think many people will notice that the flames are flame colored now.
Yeah, and there were other stuff like when R2's in the back of the X-wing, his panels were painted black originally because of the blue screen, and they changed that in the special edition, so he has blue panels again. That's one thing I always say about the special editions is I think when people look at the number of shots that have been changed, like 85-90% of those are changes that most people never realize, because it's stuff like fixing little matte lines and explosions, or fixing R2's the color of his panels, stuff like that. But it's true. Did you see a couple weeks ago they had a screening of an old Technicolor print of A New Hope, and a lot of people were all excited to see the original version, and I guess it's been almost 30 years now since the special edition, so they obviously got a lot of people that had grown up without ever seeing the original version, and there were these reactions from people that saw it that were like, wow, it looks really bad, the special effects look so old. It's like it's a 50-year-old movie. That's what 50-year-old movies look like.
He did it. That's exactly why he did it. It wasn't to piss people off. It wasn't because he just wanted to redo it. He didn't want people watching what was in the end Revenge of the Sith, and then watching his 1977 version of Star Wars. He didn't want that. And if you're an artist and you have a pride in your work, you have that choice to make. And so I think he had every right to make that choice. I just think he made a mistake in pushing the original away just for, because it did exist and we do love it,
Don't know how familiar you are with those, but do you have any thoughts on the spin-offs George did to his other franchises like Indiana Jones TV show or the Willow sequel novels he co-authored with Chris Claremont? A lot of young Indiana Jones fans today. I haven't seen Willow for about
I haven't.
35 years.
I haven't.
I've honestly never been that into Willow. And Indiana Jones.
I probably saw Young Indiana Jones 30 years ago as well. So how long ago?
Yeah, I couldn't answer a lot about those. See, trying to look through. See, this isn't true either, because, I know that it would be jarring to people to watch them in chronological order with the original, but I also think people should learn to appreciate special effects of the time. It was really, on the one hand, I think that Star Wars wouldn't be as big of a entertainment business as it is right now if he hadn't done the special editions, because it wouldn't be it wouldn't seem as contemporary and viable as it does to new generations of people. But on the other hand, too, I got really annoyed reading people saying like, oh, the old version looks so terrible. No, the old version looks spectacular for 1977. You have to understand what you're looking at.
Yeah.
It really annoys me that people don't, a lot of people now don't watch any movies that were made like before 2010. They have no idea what old movies look like,
Yeah.
You have to really, it's a different aesthetic. You have to understand.
I was having so much fun watching Rear Window the other day. It's like mid-50s.
Yeah, Rear Window looks spectacular. The Technicolor photography and everything in that movie is just amazing to look at.
And even the effects, the way that they have the reflection of the apartments in the lenses of the binoculars.
Oh yeah, it looks great. There's any era or any kind of tool, there's good ways to use the tools and bad ways to use the tools. And those old kind of optical compositing things, Hitchcock could use them in a really painterly way. That it didn't look real to our eyes today, but it looked really beautiful, and it conveyed what he was trying to do. The American Graffiti Special Edition has no changes outside of the sound mixing. No, that's not true. The American Graffiti, when it originally came out, the studio cut out a couple scenes. There were 2 scenes, I think. The scene where they're walking through like the car dump place. They had cut out a couple scenes that Lucas put back. There's also several sound mixing changes. And Lucas changed for the opening shot, the sunset. He changed that for the DVD. He loves his sunset shots. So there are several special edition changes to American Graffiti, although less than to the other ones. Another movie you worked on that was interesting to me was X-Men, Days of Future Past. What did you do on that movie? Were you mostly previs?
Yeah, it was all previs. I had a couple of sequences I worked on. I worked on the fight between Magneto and Beast, where they end up in the fountain.
Okay.
He's struggling in the fountain. That was fun to do. The other part I worked on was when Magneto was on the train and pulling up the train tracks. He was like pulling out all the train tracks from behind the train and making them. Remember that bit?
Did you interact with Bryan Singer very much on that movie?
Not in that movie. I did. I interacted more with him on Jack, the Giant Slayer. Was it Jack?
Oh, okay. I didn't notice that you worked on that one.
He asked me if I'd do the opening narrative for the previous. He really liked my voiceover stuff. Hubble Bubble, Toil and Trouble, all that stuff.
You did the voiceover that's in the...
V5 I just, he really likes my voice work.
So you're the voiceover that's in the final movie, or?
No, I wish I was.
Oh, okay.
I worked with him a few times. I worked with him on Jack the Giant Slayer. I worked with him on X-Men, and then I got to work with him on a project in 2016 that never did take off. But yeah, we've crossed paths a few times.
I like the X-Men. Well, I guess the Fox or the Bryan Singer versus X-Men movies overall, I think, are more interesting than the Marvel MCU movies. I like Days of Future Past. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great story.
It's entertaining. What about you also worked on Star Trek Beyond?
Yes, yeah.
What did you do on that one?
My very. It's like it's weird. It's like, there's big debate whether you're into Star Wars or Star Trek. I like both. My passion is probably more Star Wars, but I remember I was so jazzed to work on Star Trek, and they said, "Okay, this is you got to do this opening shot." I don't think it's the opening shot in the movie. It's just the opening shot in this sequence where Enterprise is coming out of warp, out of this cloud, and they're facing off against the swarm. And so one of my first jobs was to destroy the Enterprise. I was so gutted that I finally get to work on it, and then I had to break it. I had to break the nacelles off the back.
It's an emotional experience.
It was emotional. It was very emotional. It's like, damn. And then the Enterprise is not in the movie after that. There's the Washington after that.
Oh, that's true, huh?
Yeah, so it was like I got to work on very briefly at the beginning, my first sequence. There's a couple of other sequences I got to work on. You always hope to get issued those good shots, or that good chunk of action. I got to do a lot of the stuff where they're approaching Yorktown. It's almost like a Death Star, see-through Death Star, Yorktown, big space station city. And they're doing the chase under the canal. Did a lot of that stuff.
Okay. I think sorry, what was that?
A lot of spaceship stuff, so that was good.
Spaceship stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen that movie since it was in theaters. I was a big Star Trek nerd as a kid, but I like Next Generation. That was my thing. Yeah. I would be very sad about if I had to destroy the Enterprise D. I have an emotional attachment to that ship.
It's like when the Razor Crest gets blown up. It's just something that stings. You just can't.
Very sad. It was okay. It was fine. X-Men First Class is okay. What's your favorite X-Men movie? Are you gonna work on any of the X-Men movies that they're making now? Do you think? Because you've worked with Marvel a few times.
Yeah, I don't know. I've tended to, in the last few years, kind of get more back into animation. But instead of doing final animation, now I'm designing the sequences. Like I said, I worked on Ultraman Rising, and now I'm on another Netflix project.
Can you talk about the Netflix project you're doing now, or?
Not sure if I can.
No.
It's a season 2. It's a season 2 of a very popular Emmy Award-winning Netflix adult animation series. And that's all I can tell you. But season 1 was kick-ass, and season 2 is going to be even better. So.
Okay. I'm not sure I know which one that is, but I'm not going to push you to say anything that you you shouldn't say.
Better not say anything, just in case. So.
The 4K remaster of American Graffiti is garbage. I don't even think Lucas was involved. I've heard I saw the 4K re-release of American Graffiti in theaters last year, or maybe a year before, whenever it was. I thought it looked fine, but I did see screen comparisons, like comparing the 4K to the. I don't know. I wasn't. I didn't think it was that terrible, but I'm just going through these questions. But I've fallen way too far behind on the questions to properly answer most of them. So I don't know. If anybody, if you ask something earlier that you really, really want, try to ask it again, because I probably missed it. But sorry, this is boring to watch me skim through questions. So then, how would you release the special edition of Star Wars? You think you should do just 2 releases each time, or I mean, because there's been like 4 different incremental restorations since the special edition in 1997.
Yeah.
There's been like, and he did put it on DVD at one point, the original.
Yeah.
And then Blu-ray, and then the 4K. So would you like to have seen him remaster it for Blu-ray and then remaster it again for 4K, and then?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm happy. I'm happy if he leaves it as is. If he wants to change it, then I'm sure he's got his reasons. But like I said, I feel like there's only one person on the planet that has the right to say, you know what, I want to change something, and that's him. So if he wants to change it, then
Yeah,
I'm not going to stand in his way. I'm not going to stand in his way.
Yeah, no, it's just
I love the Star Wars imagery. So for me, I can't get enough imagery. Every shot I see of a shuttle or an alien species that I like in any of the spin-offs, I just eat that stuff up. I love that space imagery. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I was just, I guess what I was trying to get at is, because I understand the idea of, preserving the originals, but I think Lucas's thing was, to restore them would have been a big expensive venture that he just wasn't interested in, because he did release them in Laserdisc quality.
Yeah.
When he put them on DVD, it was just the Laserdisc master put out again. But people were like, well, that looks like shit because it's in 1985 Laserdisc version, or 1990 or whatever it was. But so I'm just saying, like, he could have done it in if he did it in 2006 with the Blu-ray, with the DVD, that would have looked one way. But then by the time he did it on Blu-ray, people would have been like, oh, well, this looks terrible. It looks like DVD quality. It doesn't look like Blu-ray quality.
Yeah.
It just seems like a never-ending thing to always.
I think Laserdisc was what started that whole image scrutinization off, because that's when people started like pausing the thing and saying, "Look at that guy in the background," and it started to do obsession with, because everyone's obsessed with finding the faults in people's work, like when they had the guy in jeans in the back of the Mandalorian, and people they're pulling their hair out about it, and it's like it's such a to make movies is such a it's amazing that these things get made when you imagine, when you take into consideration how many people are involved that don't necessarily even communicate with each other. It's a collaboration of all these things coming together and making a narrative that holds your attention at this certain level for 90 minutes. It's hard to do. It's hard to do and get absolutely perfect, so that if you do get that guy in the back that's showing he has a watch on, when damn, his watch is showing in that shot, like doesn't matter. It's like I'm much more forgiving. And when the Laserdisc came out, that's when people started pausing the movie and started picking out all these mistakes that we can't. Some mistakes just end up making it in the movie because you just can't catch everything. I wish we had the luxury of time to sit through and watch it as many times as these fans do to find the faults, in time to make that fix. But when it's in the can, it's all printed, it's all done. It's too late to make those changes. But I'm more forgiving. I don't think that anything. It's like saying that you want this oil painting to be perfect. It's like, how do you be perfect? Because a brushstroke is imperfect. It's human.
Right.
I'm a big fan of imperfection, and I'm more forgiving of movies that might have a mistake in them, like the stormtrooper hitting his head on the top of the door. I love that shot. I didn't see it for years. I didn't see it until someone pointed it out, and then
Yeah, nobody ever sees that till somebody points it out to them.
yeah,
That's the only way you ever see it.
but I don't hate it. Do you hate it?
No, I like it.
No.
I mean, Lucas likes it. He did a joke on it in with Jango Fett. You know, it's obviously. I mean, there's. That's the thing that people say about they always say that Lucas is this, obsessive perfectionist and that he can't leave well enough alone. And it's like, but there's actually hundreds of things in those movies that he could go in and fix if he really was obsessive. There's, little tiny things. The things that he changes are things that, you might disagree or you might agree, but they're things that to him, he thinks it makes a difference to the storytelling.
Yeah.
But he leaves. There's so many little mistakes in the special effects. It's part of the charms of the movies, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't want all that stuff rubbed out. I like that. I think that was kind of behind my idea of why he leaves in original shots of the original Dewback model and the original Wampa puppet, because it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay that there's one shot where the Dewback doesn't move. Like, that's what he's, as long as it's good enough. He was always kind of like, as long as he made his point,
Yeah.
That was like, Rick, I hate most superhero movies. I do hate most superhero movies. I do, but I like the Fox X-Men movies. Yeah. This isn't a question; it's just a statement that you should read the Claremont X-Men comics, and it's true. Those are good. It's classic. And here you can answer this because you work in the film industry. What do you think about AI's impact on, well, especially what you do, like the kind of animation?
Yeah, I mean, it's taking my job, so.
You're not a fan?
I think it's like anything. It's like, you remember when talking pictures came out?
Yeah.
And people were like, "Whoa, it's gonna ruin everything," and or when 3D came out, "Oh, it's never gonna be 2D again." Like you have these things that take off and become really faddy, and I think it will settle down at one point. People will realize that the computer, even though it's pretty clever, it's not. Yeah, it can't replace that human artistic eye. I don't think it can simulate it, but I don't think it can take it over. But the thing is that there's so many people that are driven by the dollar.
Mhm.
They're the ones that are going to make that choice to opt for AI and deny people like me that position of that job title of they're going to have this computer do its version of your job. And it's sad because it does feel kind of like lifeless and soulless, but and I'm not sure. I mean, I usually get asked, by people that want to be an animator or want to be in the film industry, how can you advise me? And this is like the worst time. The worst time for our industry, just because of AI, just because of we're still recovering from the strikes, we're still recovering from the pandemic. It's like the worst time to give someone advice on a career in this industry when the future of it is so questioned now.
I don't think AI can do what artists do. I think that the
No.
problem is that a lot of audience members and a lot of people at the studios can't tell the difference between something that's actually genuine and means something and something that's a copy of something else, So a
Okay.
lot of audiences, it's the same. That's the problem, is that audiences don't differentiate. If they did, then they would be interested in the real thing. Is that his name is Wookie?
Sorry?
I said his name is Wookie, your dog?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Wookiee's being fed right now. I just think that there are a lot of people that the people that make the decisions tend to, and this is just facts, tend to be swayed by the cheaper option.
Right.
And so, because AI is phenomenally cheaper than hiring, an army of creatives, it's going to continue for a while, I think, because they are going to make that choice, and it's only over time that we're going to see a pattern that it just doesn't quite have that hook that this other thing did, which wasn't AI.
Mm.
Like I said, there's a lot of things that you have to weigh up in even a single shot. Making the choice for a single shot, there's a lot of decisions to make, and and people have questioned George's decision making on a lot of shots, but I don't think you can replace that decision making or all that kind of influence with a program like AI.
That's what I think a lot of people don't understand, is that should be what you go to see art for, is to see, when I went to see Star Wars, it's because I wanted to see what George Lucas would do. If I just wanted, if I wanted my fan fiction of the prequels and my own personal ideas of what I thought young Anakin would be like or something, then I would write fan fiction. But what's interesting to me is to see what George Lucas would do,
Yeah.
And that's something that can't be replaced.
No, and I read his book before I saw his movie, so you read the book and you have an idea of what you think the imagery is going to look like, and then I'm so interested to see what these creatures did look like.
Yeah, it was really interesting. When the prequels were coming out, I was following like every little leak and every little, whatever online thing, and reading all the novelizations, and then and to go see the movie. Having all those spoilers didn't ruin the movie, because it was actually interesting to go see it. And you had one thing in your head, and you're like, oh, but this is, that was my thing, and then this is George Lucas's thing. Like, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And a lot of people get kind of mad because they're attached to the thing that they had. They're like, oh, but I wanted my thing. Why is George Lucas doing his thing? It's because it's his movie. That's what you pay him for.
Yeah, it's true.
But didn't you you said you were going to say something about your Rancor back there, the Rancor on the shelf that you built?
Oh yeah, my Rancor. I didn't know how much we were going to talk about the other movies, but when I was working on Dinosaur, I was talking about artist development, about Disney being very good at artist development. And so on Dinosaur, our ramp up on that movie was probably about a year. And in that year, we had all these different classes. We had a sculpting class with Ron Picard. And Ron Picard came in and gave the sculpting class, but the stipulation was it had to be a dinosaur. And I thought, okay. So I sculpted a T-Rex in this class, big old T-Rex, which I still have in a different room. And then I enjoyed the class so much that I said, would you mind if I kind of shadowed the next class that you have? I'd like to do another sculpture. He goes, yeah. I said, I'd like to do a Rancor this time. And so that's when I did that Rancor in his sculpting class. So it is really heavy, otherwise I'd bring it down.
I don't want to make you, it looks like you knock over everything on the shelf. I was curious, but he just jumped out to me because the Rancor was always my favorite character.
Yeah.
I didn't realize until years later that all the monsters I picked out as my favorites in the Star Wars movies and in other movies were all designed by Phil Tippett. I always was like drawn to the ones that he. Have you ever met Phil Tippett, or do you know him at all?
Never. No? I've never met Phil. I've met Joe Johnson, but no, I didn't ever meet Phil. And kind of a grouchy guy. You gotta.
That's like, kind of. I've heard that sort of that he's he can be a little prickly, but
there's a lot of prickly people in the film industry. You just got to find the right moment or the right company to introduce you.
Sure. Because the Phil Tippett, his studio is actually, it's like walking distance from where I live in Berkeley. It's like right down the street from me. And I've been, ever since I found that out, I've been trying to get up the nerve to just like stroll into his studio and try to chat him up, But that's why I thought it was interesting that you have a Rancor, because I didn't even realize one day I have, just around my apartment, I have like a poster of the Max Rebo band, and I have the statue of the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, and I have a big old Rancor and everything. And I realized that this is like a Phil Tippett museum in here, This is all it's all his stuff. And it's just, really amazing that he designed so many cool things. And he also did Starship Troopers and so many other things. Were you, by the time you were brought onto the Star Wars special editions, they had already designed the scurriers and the Rontos and all, like that was already...
Yeah, like I said, I was on Casper, and on Casper there was buzz going around about, the Star Wars Lucas is finally going to do something with Star Wars, but I'd heard that rumor so many times before, and it never come to fruition, that I kind of took these rumors with a pinch of salt. I thought, yeah, I mean, I'd love it if it happened while I'm here, but I'm not holding my breath. I'm not sure if it really will. And then when they said that it was going to happen, and they said they're only going to, I thought everyone on Casper, because we had a whole group of us, like I said, all trained up for the job. There was like 30 of us, and I thought a group of us would move on to New Hope. And then they announced that they only were going to hire 2 animators. And so I was like, oh, well, chances of me getting hired are pretty slim, because I'm the new guy. I just got hired for Casper. There's probably no way I'm going to get chosen.
But you were like the lead on Casper, right? So
I was the lead on Casper, but I'm still new to the company. I'd only been there for 18 months. So then they said that John Knoll was taking all the spaceship shots, and that they were going to hire one other animator. He was going to take half of it. And so then your chances halved again. I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to... There's no way I thought I could work on it, because I signed a contract which was run of picture for Casper. And so at the end of the run of pictures, your contract's up. So I went up to HR at ILM, and I asked them about, did they have my details for flying home? And they said, well, we have you down here as a full-time employee. And I went, what? I signed a contract. I remember signing it. They said, well, you're down as a full-time employee, and we have you down here working on New Hope. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And that's when I found out from HR.
Well, that's...
I thought I was going to be flying back to England, and then I find out I'm working on Star Wars.
Nobody like pulled you aside and was like, oh, by the way, you're... Wow, okay. Well, they must have liked what you were doing then.
Oh, so... yeah, because, I was... I couldn't do anything wrong on Casper. Everything I touched they seemed to love. Like, they very quickly gave me all of the Casper shots where he was being cocky. Like, there's a girl on my bed. Yes, stuff like that. Or
I remember that shot. Yes.
All of those shots where he's acting cocky, they wanted me to do those. And then all the emotional shots, we had a really amazing animator, Marianne Malcolm. She was really good doing the emotional shots where you get tear jerking. Mm-hmm. And we, as a Casper team, we rifled through all of our Casper shots so quickly that we had to help out the Ghostly Trio shots. Ghostly Trio animators had 3 ghosts to animate, whereas we had 1.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone with a Ghostly Trio shot had three times the animation to do. So very quickly, all of us Casper team rolled onto Ghostly Trio shots, and they were more fun to animate because the hero character is always very straight.
Right.
Casper is very. You can't be too much this way or this way. He's got to be very much on this narrow hero path, and so to work on the Ghostly Trio, suddenly you get to break out and do everything very kind of over the top, Warner Brothers cartoony.
Right.
So, I loved working on the Ghostly Trio shots. So it's just more fun to animate than Casper.
How many? Well, maybe you wouldn't know, but how many shots do you think of the ghosts were in that movie? I'm just trying to.
I'm not sure, but at the time it was the most amount because, like I said, it was the first movie where the hero character was not a living person; it was a computer-generated character. And then after Casper, there's the Stinky, Fatso, and Stretch. So there were so many shots.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious because at the time it was, the most ever, and then I'm thinking probably compared to today, it's probably considered nothing.
Yeah.
Because Because I was just reading about Jurassic Park, and I think that the Jurassic Park, the shots of computer animated dinosaurs in that movie, in the first one, there's something like 30 shots or something.
You wouldn't believe it was as small amount as it is. But
Yeah, and at the time, I remember seeing that movie when I was 9 years old, and it was the most mind-blowing, over-the-top special effects extravaganza that ever existed, And now you look at it, and there's like 30 shots, and movies now routinely have like 2,000.
yeah.
It's
But like
cast.
now, it's easier to make these shots as well because we have so many computer tools. Like I said, like cloth simulators, rope simulators, physics simulators, water simulators. So
Yeah, I remember at the time that was a big concern too, cloth, and there was some.
I had to animate the cloth on the Jawas. The Jawas had to have their robes move.
Mhm.
So on the Jawas, I got them to put 4 chains, like one at the front, one at the back, one at the side, one at the side, and those chains influence the cloth. So as I pulled it in, pull the cloth this way, and I'd have to simulate that cloth, what it would do, but with these chains, same as I did the ropes. The physics was the hardest thing to simulate. The creatures, you have physics as well because you're simulating weight.
Mhm.
Dewbacks, a Dewback, a computer model of a Dewback is weightless, but you have to simulate that.
Mhm.
And I did love animating those kind of details. Like if you watch the Dewbacks, when they stick their foot in the ground, I got them to model a shape of the sand that would push up around the foot. And as the foot pushes down, I push that model up through the sand, and it looks like the sand is dispersed by the foot. And when the tail swishes on the Dewback, I grabbed a sphere and I flattened it like a flat disc, and then I scaled it bigger and stretched it across, and we put a sand texture on it, and so it looks like this Dewback's tail is swishing all this sand.
Yeah, you notice he leaves a little trail in the sand with his tail.
That's me animating a sphere.
That's pretty cool.
And the texture is moving because we're scaling it, but it looks
And you
like
have to do that all by hand.
Huh? Yeah.
And you have to do it all by hand. Now they do so many more shots, and they also do it on like half the schedule. Because back then it would have been.
Because now you can say, okay, simulate that.
Yeah. So like they would have now they'd have the Jawa, right, and then there would be a program that does the robe, right? Like you move the Jawa, and then it would figure it out.
Yeah, you could have some without robes, just with the markers on them, and put all that stuff on afterwards.
I was trying to remember who said it, but there was some quote around the time of Phantom Menace that somebody said that they'd be able to do convincing CGI characters in the future as long as they were naked and bald, because they just said that the cloth and the hair was so much work, it was impossible.
Yeah, because I was at Ireland when they started Jumanji, and Jumanji, it was a decent attempt at animals, but there's so much that we were short of on Ireland.
The really hairy ones.
Hair was a big thing. The grooming, it's taken a long time to get good.
Still not perfect. But.
No, but compared to back then, I mean, like I said, back then you couldn't. Okay, if I had an animated character back then, I couldn't do this. I couldn't grab the cup and lift it.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd have to do back then was animate it touching the cup, hide the original cup, have a second cup that is attached to his hand suddenly appear. It's been invisible to this point, and then it looks like he's picking up the cup, but it's 2 cups, one attached to the hand and one free of the hand. And I've just
Okay.
Because
the attached cup is a different model.
It's a different model, and just one turns on as one turns off on one frame. That's the only way you could do it. You couldn't attach. Now you can constrain, and
right.
you can even tell the computer, I want it to constrain on at this point, or
Mm-hmm.
I want it to turn off at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, you couldn't do any of that. Not even you could parent it so it's always attached to this hand,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no constraints. It was the most frustrating. Like I said, it was like virtual super glue and duct tape. We just were making stuff up. as we as we
So
read.
a lot of those problems, nobody had ever dealt with that problem before, right? So you would just have to think of, okay, well, now what do we do? You just had to come up with something.
Now we have to make these characters talk. How are we going to do that? Okay,
Yeah.
that's how it was.
How do you get these cool guests, Rick? I don't know. I clicked on this because I was going to say my friend Robbie Ward, that he did my show a few weeks ago, and he's a really cool guy. And he started talking to Mark, and he recommended that I message Mark. And he said Mark seems really nice and approachable, because he knew I was talking about my special editions video, and I wanted to do a live stream talking about special editions. So
I love talking about special editions.
That's the story of how I got Mark. So thank you for coming on, by the way, Mark. And I wanted to, show that people think I have cool guests, because I do. I've been really lucky with my guests. I've been surprised by the people that say, I guess you had nothing better to do tonight, so you're just kind of bored or something. So, but
I just like I love, because I've always been a mentor or someone that shared. So it's just fun to share this stuff, because when I went to Harrods in London when this was like 1982. I went to Harrods in London and I met Chewbacca. Peter Mayhew was there. And Peter Mayhew was there, and he was like talking about stuff he'd done, and I just was like, I was in heaven. I could have just sat there listening to him talking about making Star Wars all day. So
yeah,
because I got so much from that. I'm sure there are people that are out there just like me that hearing about this.
Peter Mayhew was the first ever Star Wars person that I met in person, and I've told this story a couple times, but I mean, when I moved to San Francisco, I would run into celebrities, here and there. I'd see them walking around downtown and everything, and it was always fine. If it was somebody I liked, I chatted with them a few times, and it was always, I prided myself on, being cool and saying hi, but not being a fanboy and not ruining their day or taking up their time or whatever. And the only time I was at, I think it was WonderCon, and I didn't know Peter Mayhew was there. And I was just walking down an aisle, and I turned a corner, and like right to my side, Peter Mayhew was 2 feet away from me, just like out of the blue. And I'm like, immediately I felt like a 5-year-old, because it was just Chewbacca was right there. And it just like, it was the craziest feeling. And that was the only time I really like freaked out. I didn't start screaming or crying or something, but I felt like really like, oh my god, just because it was this Chewbacca. There's something about that that's really, really cool, just because you have such a special feeling for the character in the movie and whatever. Just to have that person actually talking to you or to actually be there is really amazing.
So that's why it's important that you if I'm at these conventions, that you have to give time to everyone, because some people drive 6 hours to these conventions.
Oh yeah.
You can't just, the organizers want to wave people through. They want to get people through. I hold people up.
Yeah.
Talk their ears off, if you can believe that. If you can believe it.
Yeah.
Ears off.
No, they came to see you. That's nice of you to do that. I mean, I also don't. I try. I know that whenever I run across a celebrity, I know that I try not to impose on them. I don't know what their day is like. I don't know what they're going through, so I don't assume that they don't owe me their time or anything.
Yeah.
But that's, if you can do that for somebody, that's really cool. And people really appreciate it. That's, how do I explain Leia remembering her mother in Return of the Jedi, and how do I think Lucas sees it? Well, I do have an explanation for that. You have one that you want? Anything that you want to say? Do you have anything that you want to say about it?
Take it.
I always just thought that Leia had a Force connection to her mother, and that she had an image of her mother. She says all that she has is images. She saw her mother for a few minutes, and I think she has a Force connection to her mother, and she has an image of it. She didn't say that she lived with her mother. I know that when they wrote the script for Return of the Jedi, Lucas was considering that the twins would be 3 or 4 years old in the third prequel. And so that he did think that at that point, maybe Leia would be living with her mother for part of the movie. And I think that what shifted was the prequels were originally all supposed to take place during the Clone Wars era, as much as I know about it, when he was thinking about it like back in the 70s and 80s. And what shifted was that he wanted to deal with a younger Anakin in Phantom Menace to show what he was before he became a Jedi, you know? So that shifted it. It shifted the prequels back to the second. I mean, it shifted the Clone Wars back to the second and third movie. And so that compressed the timeline. So there wasn't years after Luke and Leia were born. So that meant that they were born at the end of the third movie, as opposed to being born at maybe the end of the second movie. So that's why Leia would have originally remembered Padme, is because she would have grown up with her for the first 3 or 4 years. But I don't see it as a contradiction that she has an image of her mother. You know, she never actually says that she lived with her. Anyway, that's my answer.
That's a good answer. It's like a false Polaroid brain tattoo.
Yeah, and I always kind of liked the idea that, you know, because Leia was a girl and it was her mother, that she would have some sort of whatever telepathic, just imprinted image, you know. What is my opinion on the E.T. special edition, as well as Spielberg's comments that he shouldn't have done that? I love your videos. Thank you. What do you think about the E.T. special edition?
I don't know. What they add?
Oh, really? You don't know about that one?
No.
It was I think it got a small theatrical release, but it was on the DVDs for a while. That after Spielberg saw the Star Wars special edition, he got excited. He made a bunch of changes to ET, but then he walked it back and he said that he regretted doing it. But there was a DVD version that was the home video version for a while, where he enhanced ET's face with CGI to make the puppet more expressive. He made some changes, like when like the FBI guys are chasing Elliot, they used to have guns in their hands, and he replaced the guns with walkie-talkies because he wanted it to be less violent. But he made, I think, like 50, 60, 70 shots changed. I'm surprised you never. It was controversial at the time.
No, never heard about it. Because it disappeared for a while. ET was like, you couldn't. It kind of disappeared for a while. My kids, I wanted to show them, and I was like, couldn't find it anyway for a while.
Really? Yeah. They're See, this is why I respect Lucas more. That Lucas just says, no, I'm doing it my way. Because Spielberg did it, and he obviously, for him personally, he preferred the special edition of ET that he did. Then the fans freaked out, and Spielberg walked it back, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And the special edition disappeared, and he went back to the original version. I respect Lucas more just for sticking to his guns, you know? I mean, Spielberg, he could do whatever he wants. If Spielberg wants to go back to the original, that's his right too. Yeah. But I would respect him more if he just said, nope, this is my version, you know?
Yeah, but like I said, there was reasons that Lucas did what he did, because he was looking at it in a 9-picture frame.
That's true too.
It is a one movie. It just works as one movie. It doesn't need a prequel or sequel. It's a standalone. It works. So there's a different reasoning. He obviously, like you said, was influenced by New Hope Special Edition, or what he did with the Star Wars shows, and decided to have apply that to ET. But with Star Wars, you have the argument of things like how he replaced the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back with Ian McDiarmid. That seems really necessary, because if you're watching all 6 movies together and you don't know the history, then you'd be like, why is it a different actor for one scene? It makes more sense to have continuity. With ET, you don't really have that problem. He doesn't have to create. With ET, it was kind of like a lot of the changes are kind of what people accused Lucas of doing, which is they said that Lucas changed so much over the years, and that's why he wanted to change things. With ET, a lot of the changes it really was because Spielberg seemed to get a lot more sensitive as he got older about certain things. Like there was that joke early in the movie when I think it's Elliot calls his brother penis breath when they're all at the dinner table. Yes.
Which I always thought was funny when I was a kid. But in the ET special edition, Spielberg took that line out. He dubbed in another line. I guess he thought that the penis breath was a bit too much. But that to me seems like Spielberg, he's getting a little softer when he gets older. He doesn't want the edgy stuff in the kids movie anymore. Whereas Lucas, it always seems to me like what he was doing was very consistent over the years. You know, Lucas is always Lucas. It just seems to me. So I don't know.
Yeah, I only felt that Lucas was so successful that he, like I said, he ended up with this kind of entourage that surrounded him. That all they said was yes, and so there was very few people to challenge him and stimulate him, and so. Like I said, I did manage to pierce that bubble a couple of times, but
Well, and you said that he liked it when you challenged him. That he
that's what I'm
he liked
saying.
it. Not
But
that you were being argumentative or rude, but you were offering him different takes on things. And
exactly. But what I'm saying is that his having that bubble denied that happening so many times that there was nobody to for him to bounce those ideas off. I guess.
I thought you were going to get up to go see what your Wookiee was doing.
Wookiee is obviously showing off because he's waiting for his walk. As soon as I finish here, I've got to take him.
Oh well. Let me know if you need to go. We're probably
I'll probably
winding
wrap
down.
in like 5-10 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Making a vid like yours about George Lucas and the separation of George Lucas and the expanded universe. Yeah, I've talked about that a lot in live streams. I don't know if I'd make a whole video about it because I'm not that interested in the expanded universe really. But there was one expanded universe ship in the special editions, wasn't there? Do you know what I'm talking about? In your shot with the Ronto, the swoop bike, the bike that the guy zooms in and scares the Ronto, wasn't that originally a design from?
Yeah, it had a very similar kind of looking guy in some of the expanded universe stuff that I saw.
Yeah, that was a comic or something. So, like a design like that, where did that come from? That bike, was that just something you guys had like a archive of?
All the designs and all the boards came in from his name was, I think it's Ty Rubin Ellenson.
Okay.
Ty Rubin Ellenson. Something like that. He did all the designs, so all of the concept work for Rontos Net came from him. This is prior to Doug Chang,
So, like the bike was just an asset that you had that you could use. For that. Okay.
Yeah, it came with the rider on it, and like I said, I was just meant to make it just like steer an S, weave through the crowd, and then he had that whole idea of making it interactive on Ronto.
But you like that shot, right? You're not a fan of the stepping on the tail.
I don't think. See, like now back then I was more obsessed with animation and making things appear real.
Right.
Like if I could make something appear, like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a magician, and doing flick books or comics that the cartoon characters, like, so I could flick the colors, flick the pages of my school book, and it would animate this.
Yeah, I used to do this. Yeah, I did this.
And that was the closest thing to magic that I could find because the illusion was there. It's like, wow, he looks like he's alive. So my whole reason I end up in movies is that kind of fascination with magic and the illusion of creating life where there isn't any. But I've become less interested in that and more interested in the forest. How can I say? When you're an animator, you're working on a shot, so you're working very specifically on the tree. This one shot in the chain of shots. Your shot has to work in the chain. It has to hook up with the one before, has to work with the one afterwards. So when you watch it all through, it doesn't stand out as a hiccup. It all runs smoothly. But when I've been doing that for, like I said, 5 years traditionally and in 15 years CG, I found myself more interested in working with the forest. So working with the sequence, not the individual shot. So that's when I sort of left final animation and got into previs. Because previs, you're working on whole sequences.
So you're saying that those shots you don't like because they seem too cartoony, too unrealistic in the
No,
in the sequence?
No. What I'm saying is that now I'm more developed as a filmmaker because I've expanded. I've gone into previs, and that's my cinematography is more my passion now. So looking back, my instinct on that shot was accurate. It's a shot that you need in the movie. It's an establishing shot basically. You show it in the movie. You say this is where we are. We're in Mos Eisley, this busy, bustling space town,
Right.
and then you go into your story. The establishing shot isn't meant to participate in the storytelling at all or
Right.
distract from it. And the fact that this establishing shot grew into this ridiculous, I think, circus of all
That's
this
your
stuff.
own work you're talking about.
Yeah, and trust me, like when I went in there thinking I had the final, I was devastated when they changed it and they wanted it to be this big production. Because when you watch it, you watch the movie, suddenly this shot comes up, what's going on here? And then it leaves it and goes off.
Yeah, but it's
It
just, you
happened.
know,
I don't know.
well,
I just irks me, irks me
this
because
is,
it's not meant to draw attention to itself. I know he does it. He does it with he'll show Jabba's palace, and in the foreground something will eat something else.
right,
He
yeah.
does these things. But
Just
I
a
don't
little
know.
like flavor, you know.
Yeah,
But I mean, is that so different than stuff like, you know, like the first time you see the Dewbacks, you're just going along and suddenly the stormtroopers are riding on these big lizards and there's no explanation. It seems totally weird and, you know, random.
yeah.
I mean, it's that kind of thing, right? Just kind of like, just sort of adding texture to the,
That's texture though. So yeah, if when we had texture, we had the original established shot had all the activity of Mos Eisley, except
Mhm.
with a few added speeders and a Ronto to show more diversity in alien life and
Mhm.
transport. So we were adding texture, and then texture had been added, and I was hoping to get that stamp of approval, and then it ballooned into this other thing, which I didn't think it needed at all. It didn't. It was kind of it pulled you out of the story a bit. It jarred me as a filmmaker. If that makes sense.
Okay. No, I know what you're
It was too
saying.
much. It was too much. It's one thing to have something happen. Jabba's palace. You see this thing shoot a tongue out, grab this little thing, and eat it. Like
Mhm.
it just happens secondary, but it's very small and very quick, and it's over. This thing was in front of the thing. It rears up. The Jawa falls off. He's swinging on the front. The other one's off the back. So it was just like it was. It wasn't a quick thing. It wasn't texture. It was a production.
Yeah, but the whole shot is,
I thought it was unnecessary, and I know it's my work,
but the
so I
shot's
can brag
maybe,
on it.
yeah, no, you can, but it's, you know, the shot's like what, 1.5 seconds?
If you liked it, Rick, if you liked it, then I love it.
No. You can have your opinion. I'm
There
just
was,
interested.
there was when I was hoping that George was going to come down and direct the Boba Fett shoot.
Mhm.
And there was rumor that he was. He never did. And so, like I said, Steve Williams was there directing it. So we get to the afternoon. I said the afternoon was the second shot. And so the afternoon, he said, "Okay, I want you to." This is Steve Williams. I want you to. This is your start position. I want you to walk to your stop position. Stop. Check the docking bay. Is it empty? One last time, and exit over. There's your exit mark. Okay. So I did this shot. We did like 11 takes or something like that. And I go and you're in front of the camera. You can't see. I can't see anything.
Right.
But I get invited to see the dailies afterwards. So Steve says, you should come along. It looks like you're in front of Millennium Falcon. I'm in front of a blue screen. I'm looking at it, and sure enough, it does look like I look in the camera. It looks like I'm mugging the camera. I was like, oh my God, that's like the cardinal sin, That's the one thing you don't do, is look in the camera. In the helmet, I'm looking this way, but the T-visor is lining straight up to the camera. I can't see because I'm the other side of the camera. I can't see. But I did it on all 11 takes, and then Lucas was coming down, and I'm like, oh shit. He's gonna scrap this idea because I'm mugging the camera on every shot, every take. No one said cut. It looks like you're looking at the camera. No one said that. And he looks at it and he was like, only Boba Fett can get away with mugging the camera.
I thought you were supposed to be looking at the camera. That's what I thought they wanted you to do.
No. And so I was like, if he loves it, then I absolutely love it.
That's
no, I'm looking this way. You can't tell because that's as far as I can turn.
Yeah.
But this just lines up.
So that was just an accident. That's funny.
It was an accident.
That's funny.
But
I think it's great. It's I don't know. It's kind of a, people complain about Boba Fett in that scene because they say that scene makes him just Jabba the Hutt's hench person or something like that. I don't know where they get that from, just because he's working with. I always thought that was a really badass shot that he comes out and he just kind of like stares at the camera for a second.
Yeah.
And then he's all.
Yeah, that shot, I have the top card up here. That shot is like, I don't know, I couldn't have wished for a better freeze frame than that.
Yeah, I mean, if you get to do a.
And there's the guy. There's the guy we were talking about. Can't get it in focus, but the biker.
Oh yeah.
The biker.
Yeah, the biker from the swoop bike. Yeah. Now, if you get to do, one shot in a Star Wars movie, that's the one, right? You get to be Boba Fett, and you get it's like your big money shot where you stride right out and stare down the camera. That's really cool. That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So we got if you have any last minute questions, I think we got just a couple minutes left because it's been 5 minutes since he said 5 minutes. So I think we did all the. I think we covered everything in my list. I think we answered most of the super chats. I know we answered all the super chats. You guys got like 30 seconds before I stop looking at the comments.
But definitely check out Ultraman Rising. You don't have to be an Ultraman nerd or know anything about the character prior. And when we made the movie, we got the blessing of Subaraya. So the creator of Godzilla and Ultraman was involved from the get-go. And he gave it his blessing, and that's why I think it did really well theatrically in Japan as well. So
I will definitely check it. I'm going to rewatch Casper too.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I've seen, God, it's been a long time since I liked that movie as a kid though.
Yeah.
And now I'm wondering what the animation would look like today after all these years later.
Oh, one more thing to watch. If you're going to watch Casper, the very end of the movie, they have, it's before they do the Little Richard song. And there was a shot where the ghostly trio stick their butts to the camera. And they were not modeled with any kind of detail on their butts. But if you watch Stinky, he has a butt crack in that last shot. And the animator modeled in the butt crack himself as a joke, just for dailies, and it's in the movie.
It's still in the movie. Real butt crack. That's a good piece of trivia to end on, I think. All right, guys. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and thank you, Mark, for doing this. And guys, go check out Mark's Instagram. He posts all the time, and he has a million really cool behind-the-scenes photos and stories from all these different movies. Ones he's worked on, and a lot of other ones. I was meaning to ask, you have so many pictures. You just collect those, or? I'm
a behind-the-scenes image bounty hunter. That's what I am.
Because you have some pictures I've never seen before from a lot of movies, Gremlins, Star Wars, everything. So, yeah.
I just scour the internet, and if I haven't seen it, and I'm like, if I haven't seen it in a long time, then I'll post it. So.
Yeah, because working on these videos and stuff, I find so many behind-the-scenes pictures, and then I went to your Instagram, and there's like 100 that I've never seen before. So, yeah, go follow Mark Anthony Austin on Instagram, and he has a million cool posts. And thanks to everybody that watched. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the super chats, and have a good night, everybody.
See you.
Thank you. Thanks.